Hello, everybody, and what's up? What is happening? It's Dr. Matisa Wilman here, the host of Everyday Equity. I am so excited to be with you on this Thursday evening. I cannot believe that we have made it this far into the week. We call this Friday Eve. I'm so glad that you all are joining tonight. This is the third time that we have brought this amazing session to Facebook. And tonight I'm excited because we're also on LinkedIn Live. So I'm super excited. I'm excited, or I should say, live on LinkedIn. But I'm excited for those of you all who are joining for the very first time. Perhaps you don't even know who I am. I am Dr. Matisa Wilban. I'm a sociologist and also an equity strategist. My husband and I own a consulting firm called Wilban Enterprises, where we do grant writing, but we also do equity, strategic planning, and training. And I'm super excited because, again, for the last several weeks, we have brought to you this everyday equity opportunity. I'll tell you very quickly what everyday equity is, but before I do, I'm going to ask you whether you're on Facebook. I don't think you can share on LinkedIn, but if you could just tag somebody, let someone know that we're having this amazing conversation tonight, I would be so appreciative. I know at least on Facebook, there are already people who are on, have been waiting for the moment for when we would go live. Thank you. Thank you so much for just joining. Again, could you do me a favor and just share? Tag somebody, particularly educators, parents, maybe college students who are going into the education field, youth workers. Doesn't matter what your position. If you're connected to a child, a student, you're going to want to be a part of this conversation. So as you're doing that, as you're tagging, you're sharing, you're liking, let me tell you what everyday equity is. Thank you, Jared. Thank you for sharing in the group me. Mari, good to see you. Let me just say, I'm so glad Amari's on. She is actually, I can't remember the grade, maybe 10th grade, but she's on every single week. So I'm so glad that you're on here because I would actually love your input and questions in the comments. So again, I want you to go ahead and share, like, and tag. What is everyday equity? Well, I've been a consultant now for about 10 years or so. And my work takes me across the country to both universities and institutions of higher learning, but also organizations. And I've worked for everything from physics organizations to media organizations, arts organizations, community foundations. I've worked across a number of different sectors and spectrums. And when I talk to people, I talk a lot about systems, and we do DEI assessments for organizations, and I do trainings because I'm also a professor. We do college level kinds of trainings and also trainings that really reach people sort of where they are. But across all of these things, what I get most is for people who really have good intentions, but they don't always know how to make impact. Or I talk to individuals who have a heightened awareness, but that doesn't always translate into action. And so people, want me to come in and kind of give them a magic pill. Just tell me step by step one, two, three, what to do, and help me to get there in my organization. And I do absolutely have a framework. I have, different things that I talk to organizations about. I help them with strategic planning. We do a number of different trainings. But what I find when I leave, whatever conversation I'm having is I want to make sure that people realize that achieving equity is not as hard as we make it seem. Okay. We can look across a number of sectors and we could talk about systems. That's important. We can talk about organizational structure. That's important. We can talk about the kinds of, positions that people hold and resources and finances and human capital. We can talk about all of those things that are super important. But the reason I wanted to do this particular show, if you will, is because I want to take away the myth that you have to have a PhD to try to achieve equity. Okay. I want to take away the excuse that achieving equity no matter where I work or what I do, is for somebody else, not for me. Everyday equity is an effort to highlight those, those things happening within organizations, those inequities that we talk about often, but then also to provide some practical resources, to just have some conversations that make it intentional in our minds and from our lens in terms of how it is that we can help, again, achieve equity every single day. That's it, right? It's not difficult at all. So I'm looking at my phone right now. I want to make sure that I have that everybody has the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. Looks like I am live. Looks like somebody's watching, so I'm excited about that. But again, how can I make a difference, right? Maybe you don't have a PhD. Maybe you're not a DEI expert. Maybe you're someone who doesn't know everything about DEI. I want you to know that you can still do what's necessary to make sure that things are fair. You can do what's necessary to make sure that everybody has equal access to resources. You can do what's necessary to make sure that everybody is included and belong. Take this scenario. Have you ever walked into a room? And I'm just talking about you, no matter who you are, and I see all kinds of people on here. Have you ever walked in a room and you immediately felt like you did not belong? I have. Maybe they didn't tell you that you were supposed to dress up. And you walk in and you've got on a pair of shorts and some flip-flops and your beach attire, and everybody is in black tie or everybody is in their Sunday best. You walk in and immediately you feel like an outsider. You don't feel like you belong, right? I've absolutely had that experience happen. And I share that because there are, it's happened to you. It's definitely happened to me as well. If we take it a step further, and it's not just about beachwear, but it's because of something that you don't even have control over. You walk in, and because of the color of your skin, or because you don't have all of the information that everybody else has, it can make you feel like an outsider, not included, almost like you don't belong. All equity is suggesting that to bring everybody into the conversation, to give everybody some power over what's happening, that I have to do what's necessary to make sure that everybody has what they need to be on a level playing field, right? It's not the whole definition, but for the purposes of this conversation, I want to offer that. I remember one time talking about feeling like I did not belong. One time I went to a wedding. I love weddings. I used to teach at a Catholic university, and one of my colleagues invited me to a Catholic wedding. And if you've never been, it's probably one of the most beautiful ceremonies I've ever been to. Not only is there the groom and the bride, and they're up there and they're in these beautiful, their beautiful clothes, but there are all of these ceremonial things. And I want y'all to share. Thank you, Dr. Travis. I want y'all to share. I want you to tag somebody, because this is going to be so important tonight. So I'm in this beautiful wedding. I've got colleagues on either side of me. This ceremony is happening. And what's amazing about a Catholic ceremony is a lot of the people there knew what was going to happen in the ceremony, because they have similar sacraments and they have similar things that they do. So, the priest may say something, and then everybody in the congregation who is Catholic, they know what to say next. I'm not Catholic. I'd never been to a Catholic wedding. So I'm sitting there like, what am I supposed to be saying right now? But you know what the people next to me did? Because they recognized that I was an outsider, before the next thing that was to be said, they would whisper it to me, right? Y'all listen to what I'm saying. When it was time to kneel, which we did quite often, before it was time to kneel, they would look at me and say, "Hey, it's time to kneel." Why is this an important point to what we're talking about tonight? because I was in a place where I did not belong because I didn't know the norms or the culture or the tradition. But the people around me did not allow me to stay in that space. They did what was necessary to help me feel like I was not an outsider. All right. Hey, Daryl, that's my coach on. So, when we think about this idea of everyday equity, I want us to take the myth. I want us to almost take the work out of it. Not that it's simple, not that it isn't something that we have to be intentional about, but if we're really trying to bring everybody in, I believe we can partner together to make sure that everybody has what's necessary, right? Whether it's whispering what you need to know next, whether it's giving a resource so that you don't feel like you don't belong and that you're not a part, or it's making sure, as we're going to talk about tonight, that students have what they need to be successful. Because it's not just about, do I not feel like I belong? For many people, and in many instances, it is, if they don't, if there aren't more resources given, then maybe that student isn't going to pass, or that student isn't going to fulfill their potential, or that student isn't going to graduate and go on to do great things. Tonight, we're talking about, good to see, thank you all for sharing and tagging. So tonight we're talking about education and equity. We're talking about how we can create support networks among parents, among administrators. Yes, those rules are everything. Parents, administrators, and teachers, to make sure that students are successful. Did you know, when we think about what's happening within the school system, even though we can point to challenges, do you know that we're better together when it comes to bringing solutions? Last week, we talked about kids with ADHD. We talked about kids with autism who are considered neurodivergent, who don't necessarily always have the resources. Well, the question that came out of that conversation is, what's next? What do we do? How do we make it equitable? I don't have a teaching degree, right? I'm not an administrator. What can I do to make sure that the students who are either in my household, in my neighborhood, in my school, have what they need to make it, to do well? So that's what we're talking about tonight. I'm so excited. I have a couple of guests who are going to be with me. One of them is on now. The second is going to be joining in just a bit. So I'm going to start with our first guest. And then the second one, excuse me, who happens to be on another show, another assignment right now. She's going to be coming in later. So I'm super excited to bring in our first guest, Dr. Sharina Travis. She's so humble. She doesn't want to put the doctor before it. But Dr. Sharina Travis is a friend. She has got, and I really, Dr. Travis, I need you to tell just a little bit of your story. She has an amazing story about inequity, about what it means to be gifted, but in a situation that's inequitable, but how those extra resources and helps can take you to a whole new place. This woman who had to deal with so much is now has her doctorate. Come on, somebody. She's in administration. She is making an amazing difference in her own school system. She really embodies exactly why this conversation is important. So I said all of that. Dr. Travis, can you just, first of all, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So do me a favor. Can you tell us just a little bit about your education journey? People see the doctor, or
Mhm.
people hear that, they see where you are now, but talk about where you came from just a little bit.
Just a tad. Okay, yes. And I am the wife of Travell Travis. So I see him in the
Grand
comments.
husband. I love it.
Just a little bit. Went to a school, and from Philadelphia. Went to a school. It took one of my teachers to realize that I was gifted in the area of math. I was in fourth grade doing eighth grade math with no hesitation.
Mm.
So she saw my needs, and saw that, hey, this girl is not, this neighborhood school is not fit for her.
Mm.
And she suggested to my parents that I go to what we call a magnet school, which was
Mhm.
the top school and still is the top school in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, tri-state area. Not bragging, but that's what it is.
That's all right. That's all right.
So I go there, and I'm excelling there, doing all that I'm doing. And then in the midst of that, dealing with that diverse environment, which was pretty different from where I was, I
Mm.
ended up experiencing racism, which turned me into a different type of person.
Mm.
Um, Another side of me came out, if I could say that. Another side of me came out, and I ended up getting kicked out of that school because of
Wow.
my behavior issues. So then I end up in a neighborhood school. But even then, even with all of those trials, I end up with a full scholarship on my way to college. It was
Wow.
an academic scholarship. I didn't play sports like that. So it was an academic scholarship. And then I never forget, I'm a Black woman and majoring in mathematics. And my professor was a white man. And I
Mhm.
went to a PWI,
Mhm.
and in our consultation for advisement for the next semester, he was like, "Listen, I think you should change your major." And I said, "Sir, why do you think I should change my major?" And he said, "Well, you have things going against you. My grades were fine. You
Mhm.
have things going against you." And I said, "Well, what is that?" And he said, "Well, one, you're Black. Two, you're a woman. Neither one of those make it to the end of this program."
Wait a minute. He said that to you directly?
He said that to me directly. Yes, yes.
Wow.
Yes, and he is still teaching at the college. So it almost took me back to my middle school experience, to
Mm.
where that brought out another side of me.
Sure.
So in one hand, I ended up being sidetracked, and I lost my scholarship
Mm.
due to acting out or just being in college, and I
Mhm.
lost my scholarship, and then his words come back to me, and I'm like, "Hold on.
Wow.
No, I'm not gonna let this guy win." And I worked 2 jobs and put myself through school. So I finished undergrad, and then I have my master's degree. I
Mhm.
have a specialist degree in curriculum and instruction, and then last year I finished with my doctoral degree in educational leadership.
Woo!
So what he said didn't triumph over me. His words did not become the fruit that I ate because I didn't receive
Listen.
it.
Wait a minute. Now, don't do too much, okay?
Sorry,
Don't do too much. You get me excited
sorry,
in here.
sorry. And
No,
I
no,
was
no,
shocked.
no. There's so many things that we could unpack,
Mhm,
and I want to talk about a couple, and then our next guest, I'm going to bring her on so the three of us can have a conversation. But one of the things that I really love about this story is the fact that if somebody only saw you on the surface, they saw
mhm,
the fighting or, all the little things that you said happen as a result of the racism, the
mhm,
discrimination,
mhm.
the things that people were doing to you, um, they would count you out.
Right.
And that's what happens often when we look at kids in terms of class,
Mhm.
certainly Black and brown kids,
Certainly.
where rather than getting to the heart and the root of the things that's going on, we only look at the behavior and then make a decision. You hear people saying this, oh, that kid's just bad, right?
Mhm.
We use that as sort of the surface kind of thing that we put over all kids. This kid is bad, rather than trying to really understand, what's going on. Would you say that that's what you see or saw?
That's what I saw, and that's what I see. I've been a teacher for this is my 11th year in education. I've been a
Mhm.
curriculum writer for my district for several years, and this year I'm in a new role, and I'm a teacher fellow, which I give support to new and provisionally licensed teachers in my district. So
Mhm.
that allows me to see things from a different lens. But of course, that is how, especially with our Black and brown boys,
Mm.
that is how they are perceived. If they're active, oh, they're bad. Oh, if they're only concerned about sports, they're only concerned Black girls, they're only concerned about hair and nails.
Mhm.
Not that they're bored in class because they already did the math problem 10 minutes ago. That was me. I was bored. So because I was bored in class,
Mhm.
I created disruptions because the teacher didn't know how to feed me what I needed.
Wow.
Equity.
Wow. That is so, so good. Oh, and it takes these conversations, it
Hmm.
takes an understanding of the students that it's not, a cookie cutter or
Hmm.
one size fits all. And I love what you just said. That was really a gem, that they didn't really get to understand what you needed.
Hmm.
They made assumptions about what they saw.
Right.
Good, good, good. All right. Listen, I need you all. I'm about to bring our next guest in. The three of us are going to have this conversation, but I need you to go ahead and share. We've got folks both on LinkedIn and also on Facebook. Again, we're having a conversation about equity and education with the whole objective of figuring out what we can do as a team to make sure that our students are better, our schools are better, our communities are better, et cetera, et cetera. So the next person that I'm going to bring on is actually a social worker. She deals with a lot as far as students concerns are concerned in terms of behavior, partnering with teachers, partnering with parents. So I think we're going to have a really, really great conversation. Let me introduce all of you all to my friend Adelia Johnson.
Hey,
Hey, Adelia.
how y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful. Glad to be here.
I am so, so glad to have you. Now, listen, I want to bring you into the conversation. We're talking about early, experiences with equity. Dr. Travis was talking about just her education journey, where she started, where she is now. Can you point to a time throughout your education where equity came up for you, whether it was witnessing an inequity or something that you personally experienced?
Yes, I remember when I transitioned from we moved to Cobb County in middle school, and I will never forget the environment from moving from like the Cobb County schools, which a lot of our schools were predominantly African American, and then going to Cobb County where it was
Okay.
completely flipped.
Okay.
And I recall being in a classroom and needing help with something and
Mhm.
remembering how one student was treated versus how I was treated. I
Mm.
was ignored. The question that I was asked, what county did you come from? And it
Mm.
was like with such agitation.
Mhm.
Like, I'm tired of y'all coming from across county lines. Like, I read through it, right? Like, I can pick up on your agitation. And
Absolutely.
so, what that created, a lot of people are going to be a little shocked about this, but that created me to skip.
Hmm.
I wouldn't go to school.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
my mom was working all day, so it's not like she was gonna know that I
Mhm.
was skipping. So I wasn't like out doing anything crazy. She would leave before we went to school. I would get up, get dressed, and I just wouldn't go because I felt like I was agitating the teachers. And I,
Wow.
they were, I was getting on their nerves. But I also saw the same thing with my brother. My brother actually was put out and sent to an alternative school
Mm.
because they didn't take time with him
Mhm.
and didn't look at the adjustment issues that were going on.
You know what I love about that story? Again, I want y'all to listen, right? Everybody who's listening to this. Here Adelia is working in the school system. She's a social worker, but because of what she experienced in school,
Mhm.
it caused her to have behavior that one would think a troubled student would have, right? But
Mhm.
not really going in to say what's the heart, what's going on. And I'm not saying that that's true for every student, but I would dare say it's true for a number of students. So when we think about this idea of equity, what's said over us and to us absolutely matters. How folks respond to our behavior, whether or not we're labeled, makes a difference. When I was growing up, and for those who don't know what a PWI is, it's a predominantly white institution. Well, I grew up in all PWIs from the time I was in kindergarten till the time I went to graduate school.
Mm.
Um, and my experience was really much more subtle. But there was surprise. Oh, you're doing this. I remember
Mm.
when I was in high school, I was applying to the place I ended up going to for undergrad, prestigious small private school in Kentucky. And the guidance counselor was asking my dad, "Oh, where's Matisa applying for school?" My dad told her, and she was like, "Oh, I don't think she needs to do that because we've had other better students who've gone and they didn't make it." So because, and again, that was code for she's Black from
Mhm.
Eastern Kentucky and a woman, she's not going to make it. And I will tell you that um, I'll just say the people that she thought was going to make it who were related to her didn't, and I
Mhm.
did.
Mhm.
So it just goes to show you that education is super duper important, but then how we handle kids while in school is also important. So before I get to my next question, if you're watching, I'd love to know your equity story. What happened with you in education? Did you experience something? Did you see something? Was there anything unequal about your experience? If so, I want you to put it in the comments because I'd love to hear. So tell me, for each of you all, whoever wants to go first, why education for you?
I wanted to be my fourth grade teacher who saw
Mm,
something in that student. I wanted to be that for other kids, and especially kids that look like me.
mhm,
And I've always worked in schools where they're underserved, um, minority schools, schools that basically have people have given up on. I
mhm,
thrive in those in predicaments. I thrive in those environments. They're rough, but I thrived there because that was my school.
mm,
And just to allow those students to know that they have an opportunity to get out, they have an opportunity to do more, to be more than just a football player or a basketball player. They have an opportunity to be a mathematician, a scientist, an entrepreneur. That's why I am here. That's what keeps me here.
mm.
That's exactly what keeps me here.
That's so good because you could go other places.
Mhm.
You could go other places,
I
but
could.
and you and I have talked about some stories. I won't even ask you to give me any, but stories where you put yourself potentially in harm's way, or you
Mhm.
put yourself as a mother figure to students that other people would have given up on, but you did it because you see something in them.
And for that exact story, and there I'll give it real quick,
Okay.
but there was a situation where an officer was involved and there a student was involved. And I told the student, "Hey, I need you to get closer to me because I don't know if you're gonna make it out of here." And it was a black male. But I gave the student what he needed. At the time, he did not need a teacher. He did not need an administrator.
Mm,
He needed a mother figure to say, "Get your tail over here because you might not make it home tonight and you know how this looks."
wow.
And the student slowly made his way to me and he made it home safely. But it was seeing what the need of the student beyond what was going on in the present circumstance.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Again, that's a nugget I need you all to get because everyday equity is about what I can do as an individual
Mhm.
every single day. Dr. Travis didn't say, go get an education degree, right? So you can go and come and get these students out. She said, give the student what they needed in that moment. The
Right.
student did not necessarily need even a big old lecture. The
Mhm.
student didn't need you to be teacher. The student needed you to be mother figure and say, like you said, get your butt over here because we don't know if you're going to make it out. Why is
Mhm.
that important? Because for me, that's symbolic. It is symbolic of everyday equity that I am looking for the opportunity to provide what an individual needs so that they can make it out,
There you go.
figuratively or literally.
Mhm.
I love it. What about for you, Delia?
I will say that I initially went into education because I had a black son that was going into education.
Mm,
And I remember when I was 16, 15, going on 16, me and my mom experienced homelessness for a little while.
mm,
It was just about a week or so, well, a few weeks, but we were out of the parking lot in the hotel after about a week.
okay.
But I remember that I just remember like going to school and feeling real unseen,
Mm,
like leaving from school, sleeping in a car, and feeling real unseen. And just thinking to myself, I can't be the only one going through this. and nobody sees it. Like nobody sees, like it was just kind of like nobody is picking up on how I'm feeling, on how
Wow.
frustrated I am. Like, and I just hoping somebody would ask me, what's wrong? What do you have going on? So I wanted to be that because I understand that a lot of the things that we tackle with our kids is layers to this. We
Absolutely.
see attendance issues and we see behavior issues, and we can only help where we can. There are some that I understand we won't be able to, stand in a gap for.
Mhm.
However, I do this work because somebody has to kind of be the interpreter, is how I like to say it, between the
Mm.
family and the school, and the
Mhm.
school and the family.
Mhm.
Because the family don't trust the school, and the school blames the family, and it's a whole lot of in between that all
Mhm.
of us need to try to understand. And
Mhm.
so I like to sit at the tables, and I say that I'm kind of grace for the hard stuff because I want to sit at the table and hash through the hard stuff so that we can really get to what really needs to be, handled and dealt with.
Oh my gosh. So much, so much. Again, I'm so glad y'all are on here tonight. You know how your baby leaps, how you just have something in you, just like, so you all are just making me really excited about what we're talking about. So I have a couple of questions. Something that you just said, Adelia, that was super, super important to me. Number one, and you weren't even on here when I was talking earlier about this idea of belonging and feeling like you're included. And that's exactly what I hear you saying, that you wanted somebody to be able to see your plight, see beyond your math scores or your, English scores. Not that those things aren't important. Not also to say that teachers are super people. Sometimes I think we do that. We think teachers should know everything about everything. I don't think that's the case either. But the reality is, and I think about this with my own students, and I'll say this to them. I mean, I'm telling you, they love me because I'll come in there and say, "Okay, how was your weekend? Anybody feeling sad? Let's talk about it." Because I realize that my students are human, right? And I can teach you theory all day long, but if you're really upset because your mom's in the hospital, maybe you're not going to get the theory. You don't care about the theory right now because of your humanity, right? And I think about that for students as we're interacting, that sometimes just seeing a student. I remember a student came to me, and it seems petty or seems small, but she had broken up with her boyfriend, and she's in tears. I think she was a freshman, if I'm not mistaken. Did I just allow her to blow off her college class because she was sad about her boyfriend? No, of course not. But did I try to reach her and her humanity for a moment to try to pull her back in? Yes, right? So, to your point, Adelia, this idea of seeing the students that we're teaching, I think is super important. One of the things that I do teach or do trainings on is this idea of emotional intelligence. That when you've got emotional intelligence, it can lead you beyond just the grades and really help you tap into the person. And I'm telling you what I know. If you can get to the person, the grades are usually they're going to come. And I know y'all know that better than I do. Okay, so the other thing that I was going to say, and I'm going to ask this as a question because both of you all were making me think about this. When I think about equity in education, when I think about it in any type of organization or institution, I think about the importance of people being at the table, right? That it takes all kinds of, that when you have diverse people at the table making decisions, not just there to come do the bidding of everybody, but you've got diverse people at the table, that it makes a difference. Can each of you talk about the importance of diversity and different voices at the table and making decisions as it relates to your roles? And either of you can go first.
All right, I'll go first. I will say that I think what's the word? It's really important for ego and pride to
Oh,
be removed from the table, because working in education, I see it a lot.
mhm,
Like I'm here with two amazing people that have earned every bit of their PhD. I'm
mhm,
coming, y'all. Just be patient with me.
We know it. You covered.
But when you're at the table, that child doesn't care about some doctorate. They don't even know what it takes to get a doctorate just yet. Nor do they care. So
Okay.
part of having everybody at the table is understanding that I don't know it all as the social worker. There are some lanes and some areas that I just don't get. And so it's important for me to put my pride aside and pull other people into the table and making sure that everybody understands what their role is at that table. So there's not a meeting that I have or a meeting that I lead without am I freezing?
Nope,
Without okay, without making sure that I'm explaining the reason why we're at that table so that everybody can feel respected. Everybody can operate in their lane freely as long as you're not violating that child or that family's rights or being disrespectful or anything like that or condescending, because that happens sometimes too. And so I think it's important to have different people at the tables that wear different hats, because we have to also remember that we don't know it all. And there's just some areas in as far as that child and that family is concerned where everybody needs to kind of be at the table to offer their expertise.
That's good. And I'm going to come back to what you're just talking about in a minute, especially as it relates to social workers. Dr. Travis, why is it important to have diversity at the table?
One, because the smartest person in the room is the room, right? So like Adelia said, I don't know it all. They don't know it all. One thing I appreciate about our school currently, I'm on the leadership team, the admin team, but we also, in planning for this school year, brought in a student and brought in a parent.
Love it.
Because the parents need to know, hey, this is where we stand. This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is what the goals is that we want to achieve. And then can relate that to the other parents, and then can also give insight. Hey, these nightly homework assignments aren't working in every class because I got to work, or my kid goes home to themselves, or some grandmom is watching them overnight and she doesn't know how to help them with homework. We need to hear that, because otherwise we would be making decisions based on our own knowledge and our own abilities of what we think, going back to what we think people need, not versus what they actually need. And how can you find out what people actually need unless you find information from said parties?
Wow. No, wait a minute. Two things. First of all, do y'all really listen when parents tell y'all giving too much homework?
I do. As a teacher, I do. As administrator, I mean, I would say yes. I would say yes.
That's good to know. I need to remember.
Like, we try to coordinate just something as simple as trying to make sure, at the end of the 9 weeks, or at the end of the quarter, everybody is not testing during the same day. That could stress a kid out if you're taking 6 to 8 classes. So they try to coordinate, okay, English will be on this day, which is 2 or 3 days away from math, your real core subject, so that everybody isn't testing on the same day.
I love that. No, that's really good to know. I know Lawrence and I are really, really involved parents, and I know there are a lot of really involved parents who work. And I love the acknowledgement that, there's some people who just can't make it to meetings, in the same way that others can't. So considering all of that is super important. Two things. One is, if you're watching, if you have a question for Dr. Travis, for myself, for Adelia, please make sure that you put it in the comments, because I'm going to give us some time at the very end. We are going to wrap up on time, but if you've got a question, we would love to address them. Let's hear from Bishop Travis, who is also an attorney and also a professor. So he's got some great insight as well. I could not work in the secondary schools. I have a special grace to stand in the gap and work in the trenches. I believe that 100%. I know even when I'm dealing with my kids who are teenagers, at one point I was like, maybe I'll just homeschool them. And then I was like, that is not it's not my grace. I understand that. So let me ask this question. If you got questions, put it in the comments. So we talked about the importance of everybody being at the table, nobody being smarter than the other, or at least us being experts in our areas. I love that you include parents and students. Love it. Because how are we going to know the needs of a student and we're never hearing their voice or amplifying their voices? So this is my first question. Adelia, are there social workers in every school or does that vary?
I will say that it varies from district to district.
Mhm.
So Atlanta, well, Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, Georgia, all over the place, right? Some districts just transitioned to this place where every school has a school social worker.
Okay.
If you go in your more rural areas or in Georgia, speaking of Georgia,
Mhm.
you're probably going to have one social worker that may have 3 schools,
Got
may
you.
have 2 schools. The concept is to give them a lower referral school and then a higher referral school, so it kind of meshes in the middle. But
Gotcha.
post COVID, everybody's high referral,
Mm.
everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just varies from district to district.
Okay. What's it like for you, Dr. Travis, in your
The
area?
same, exactly what she just said. Everybody, well, I work at a school where we have a full-time social worker,
Okay.
full-time psychiatrist, full-time psychologist. So that tells you the type of school that I work at. We have a full-time annex support team, like a behavioral support team.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Mm.
Wow. I wasn't going to wade into the post-COVID kind of conversation because we'll have to come back and do a whole other
Mhm.
conversation on, what COVID has done to students and all of that. But what I really want to talk about, because we only have about 20 minutes left, or really less than that. This is my question for all of us. I represent the parents. We have administrator, we have social worker. Last time we talked about teachers. And I guess my question to you all is, how can people partner? What's the best way to partner when it comes to education for our students? I am a problem solver. I am a believer that we're better together. I can critique something all day long, and I do that. That's what I do for a living. But I also feel like it's important for us to really talk about what can be done. That's the whole purpose of this show. Everyday equity is about how we can come together and give students what they need, teachers what they need to make sure that there's success all around. So, from your perspectives, what's this network look like? What do we have to do to come together?
Well, I would say that is one of the reasons why my position was created. So I am like I am a support. There is not one of me in every school. There are certain schools that fit a criteria that are high turnover, high needs in terms of academic support, um, new principles and different things like that. So there's a need for my role, and I support teachers in that. So that's one area. But you need to assess what students need. Not only what students need, but what administration needs, what
Mm,
teachers need.
mhm.
Now, I'm gonna say this briefly, but we're dealing with a time where the teachers that are teaching did not go to school for teaching, the
Wow.
majority of them. And
Mhm.
so, if they did not go to school for teaching, but they're teaching our children, and we want them to teach our children to the best of their ability or the best that our students need, or give the students what they need, then
Mhm.
we need to support the teachers in teaching our students. So one thing I would say is go to PTA meetings.
Mhm.
Um, Ask your school, hey, is there any way that I can volunteer? An adult in the hallway makes a difference, whether you are just standing there or you're actively moving students along. An
Wow.
adult presence makes a difference. They
Mhm.
will not act up a certain way if they see an adult. But if there is nobody there, or if everybody there is stressed out, then the kids are left to their own devices. The other thing I would say is, as students, as teachers, as parents, one thing I thought about was our students who have special needs, have disabilities, or have been labeled as such. But there are some parents that don't know what that IEP world looks like, that don't know what that system looks like. So why not have a session to say, hey, let's walk you through the IEP process. Let's walk you through the 504 process, because that's meeting the parent where they are. If my student is being recommended for a BIP, a behavior intervention plan, let's walk through. This is what they're going to do. They're going to test your child for this. They're going to give your child this type of test, and you want to make sure that is this number, that is this diagnosis. If you don't see that, don't sign anything. But instead of that, our children get labeled with such things because right now we're just being paper pushers. They're being disruptive. We want them to have a certain label so that they can have certain services, so that we can push them along. And I'm just telling you how it is, so that we can just push them along and get them on out of here. But we need to help bridge the gap so that our parents know what they're actually getting into, and vice versa for the parents that don't, where their kids actually need the services, but they don't know who to reach out to. They know their child isn't reading on grade level. They know their child is in 8th grade, but only doing 2nd grade math work, or doesn't know their multiplication tables. They know something's up, but don't even really know who to reach out to, how to reach out, or what resources are available to them. So I think if, like Pastor Travis said, churches can partner. What do you need? And oftentimes with a lot of schools, we'll find a lot of resources in the beginning of the school year, because everybody wants to do back to school giveaway. School supplies are cheap to give away, okay? So everybody wants to do that. But come January, when the kids have lost notebooks, lost pencils, lost book bags, everybody, we don't know where to get pencils from. I can't find a pencil. Listen, what happened to the mid-year giveaway? And I think that could be beneficial as well. So that's just my little.
No, so much. I don't want to forget it. I need you all to write this down, because what I don't want you to do is walk away from this live and start complaining about your local school and about all the stuff that's happening when we are giving you tools and resources tonight. And what Dr. Travis said is a couple of things. Number one, if you can't do anything else, volunteer to stand in the hallway. That's easy to do, right? She said, thanks. Don't just plan a back to school giveaway time. Do one mid-semester. Do one mid next semester. Y'all know your kids lose their socks every day, but wonder why teachers are sending something home to send more pencils or whatever, right? That's something that can be done. I love what Pastor Bishop Travis is saying. You know what? What if churches adopted a school? I know at the beginning of the school year, you see a lot of things where fathers go and they're there standing and they're clapping for the kids getting off the bus. But what if a church says, we're going to adopt a school, and not only will we supply, do the school supplies, but we're going to be there monthly, or we're going to, make it a consistent thing, right? Adelia said, I ain't got a pencil. I woke myself up. Come on, because we ain't got no alarm clock. Is that what people say? Because ain't nobody washed my uniform, brushed my blah, 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 blah. Oh, I remember this. I've seen this. Yes, I've seen this. Oh, it's a poem. Don't make me cry. Listen, I remember reading this before. So the point to be made is, when we talk about equity, again, we don't have to have some high position. All we have to have is intentionality. Your sorority could adopt a school, your fraternity, right? My book club. Now that I'm thinking about this, we're all a part of groups that can, do something to help the schools that are around us. The other thing that I don't want us to lose sight of, and Dr. Travis said this, and it just did something to me. She talked about the fact we know there's a teacher shortage. People talk about it all the time. The question becomes, who's filling in? A lot of times there's students or teachers who don't necessarily have education degrees, that they have certificates in other ways. So the question becomes, how can I support the kid, the student? Support the teacher, right? And if you don't know, ask the question, have some patience, have some grace, right? Show up for PTA. I can't tell you the number of times I know that I've been in meetings And it's not been, all the people complaining aren't necessarily there. Sometimes they're working, sometimes they're doing other things, but sometimes they're thinking somebody else is going to do it. This is a nudge. You're the one. Okay.
Can I add one more thing? Or
Please.
the other thing
Yeah.
I would say is go to your school board meetings.
Mm,
If they are open to the public, go to your school board meetings. A
mhm.
lot of times the decisions, they will listen to you and it gets put on the record. So go there. And the other thing I was thinking about is when our kids were going back to school, at one of our students in the county, fathers, male figures joined together to greet the kids on their first day back to school.
Wow. Wow.
That makes a difference.
Mhm.
Oh, did he just post that?
Just positive. Yep.
Yeah. um, we're one, so that makes sense. But um, fathers, if I didn't have a father, just seeing that male presence meant a lot. It meant a lot to the kids that came. So, and then we have a local church that volunteers, and the men come and volunteer at our school.
I love it. I love it. So there are things that we can do. Again, incremental but intentional. All right. Adelia, what would you add? What would you say from your perspective?
I would add to also, so I think it's important for the school, the community, and the families to work in a cadence. So it's important to, in addition to going to like your school board meetings, going to like neighborhood planning unit meetings. Some parents don't even know what that is. They don't even know what's discussed in those meetings, but those meetings discuss the future of your neighborhood. And so
Mhm.
it's important, I think, for families to understand and meet and know who some of these community partners are,
Mhm.
because now we're talking about going back to that village concept, to where people know where your children are, they know who your children are. Your mom was at the NPU meeting. Why are you in here and it's 2 o'clock? That
Mhm.
goes a long way.
Mhm.
People just in the community knowing your children, knowing your family. So creating this concept of community again, I think is important for parents to ask questions, and sometimes they don't know what to ask. So having like a write up. So we're talking about this whole cadence, right? So having a write up or something simple with simple definitions. This is what a 504 is. This is what
Mhm.
IEP stands for. Some parents are getting IEPs. They don't even know what IEP stand for. Um, because I see it. They get on the high school level and then they say, well, at one point in time they had something, but I really don't know what it was. And so they don't know the full totality of their rights. When people know that, they will take advantage of you and they will put data on your child to set up a paper trail, because some people understand that when you put certain things on paper, your child is going to be um is going to be I'm just say judged for what's on paper,
Mhm.
not for the heart that they have, not
Mhm.
for the fact that they had 5 years of trauma, not accounting for the fact that they just came out of foster care. None of that is in the documentation. The only thing that's in the documentation is how they're a behavior problem and how we have, okay, this is what we did to try to address it. So we can't do no more. So now they got to go somewhere else
Mhm.
to do the same thing.
Mhm.
So I just want to encourage everybody to just kind of be mindful of each person's perspective and
Mhm.
to try to help everybody that's involved understand how everything hones back in on the child and the family.
Mhm.
All parties are important. However, as a school district, we're supposed to be here to service these kids and we're
Mhm.
supposed to be here to educate the next generation. How are we going to do that if they don't want to be educated? And it's not that they don't necessarily want to be, they don't want to be educated in your classroom or in your school
There you
because
go.
they feel the tension, they feel the judgment, they feel that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just think that it's important for everybody to make sure that they're on the same page and that people are understanding the definitions. Don't talk over parents' heads,
That's
because
good.
I've seen parents do it where they just say, okay. They don't know. A lot of times after the meeting, I'll say, come to my office. Did you understand everything that was just said in there? Miss Johnson, I don't know what they were talking about in there. I don't know. I have no idea.
That is so
Let's have
funny.
a conversation. Sit down.
But you know what is funny, and I say this often. It doesn't matter your education, your degrees. I've been in conversations where I'm like, what? Because it's foreign to me, right? I remember one time I was in a meeting, and they were talking about my son's behavior. Deshaun has ADHD. I've talked about that before. And I think he had thrown a water, like a kid had thrown a water bottle at him. He threw it back and hit her. This is when he was younger. And they were talking about it and they had written it up. And I think they used the word assault. So I was like, wait a minute. What did you say? So they read it back. And I said, so you're talking about when he, as a kid, responded to another kid threw a water bottle, it didn't hurt her, no blood. I think it like hit her leg or something. You're calling that assault? And we made them change that language. But imagine what that would have done. That would have followed him, as you said. That's a very different assault in my mind is very different than a kid playing with another kid. Doesn't make it right, right, in terms of that's against the rules, but it's not assault. So the point that I'm making is we have to be educated or we have to be advocates. That's what I would say from a parent perspective. And I love, and both of you all touched on this. Both of you all touched on this, the importance of a network and trying to understand the language, making the language common, right? Making the language accessible so that everybody's on the same page and understand. I would say from a parent's perspective, if you don't know, ask the question. Don't feel like it's a dumb question. It's the life and death of your kid's education. If you think about it in that way. A question was asked, what if the school board doesn't have enough active participants to assist the children? In my school system, many schools don't have nurses.
So
Go ahead.
I said, take it up with your local and state representatives. At that point, you take it higher. Somebody has to answer to this. And you don't settle for, oh, well, we just don't have anybody.
That's good.
Somebody. They're going to find somebody if enough people start making noise.
So good. Adelia says, for parents, do an open records request for your child's educational record. Read through that like it's your credit report. Right? Make sure what's on here. Take this negative part off. And I think, and we have to be that intentional. And as I said at the outset, and we're wrapping up now, if you've got a final question, you can go ahead and put it in the comments because we're about to end. I believe we're better together. That's why I really wanted to bring y'all's perspectives in. We're not at odds with each other. Now, I do understand there can be some tension. I do understand that everybody's personalities don't, mesh and all of that. But if the common goal is to make sure that our students are successful, then we have to do what's necessary. And I'll end with what Adelia, or both of you all kind of alluded to this idea of putting egos aside. Doesn't matter, right? Put our ego aside for the benefit of the student. And guess what? It's not just the benefit of the student, it's the benefit of society. Because that kid that you're passing along is going to be the healthcare worker that's going to be taking care of you in the assisted living facility, right? It's going to be your banker. It's going to be, fill in the blank. So what we do matters. And I'll say this, somebody was talking about, well, I won't get into that. I was about to go down a rabbit hole because they were talking about paying property taxes or school taxes. And they were like, but if we don't have a kid in the school, why are we paying this money? And I said, that might not be your child, but it's going to be the person that works for you or works with you. I want to educate them. Like, take my money because I want to make sure that as a society, we are educating and doing right by the members of this society. So thank you both, Dr. Travis, Adelia. You all have been amazing, as I knew you would be. We're ending now. Any final word from you before I take you off?
Thank you for the opportunity. And just know that equity is not this foreign thing, and I hope you all have gained from this conversation. Did I freeze? I hope you all have gained from this conversation that equity is something that is reachable.
That's good. Thank you. Adelia, what would you say?
I would say just ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to say that you don't know. And try to build, don't let people rush you off. Don't let people brush you off. You stay planted and flat-footed until you get the answers that you need. I would say that, because sometimes that whole educational field can be very intimidating, and I would just encourage parents, even with teachers, try to build a collaboration, with the parent and the family, so that you all can work together. And like you said, I love what you said. It's not us trying to pit against one another. It's us really trying to help one another, because your child may be the one that helped take care of me eventually at some point. And I don't want them to remember, that you brushed me off or you weren't kind to me. So
That's right. Awesome. Thank you, Adelia. Thank you so much. Thank you again to both of my guests tonight, Dr. Travis as well as Ms. Johnson, both amazing women, amazing social worker, administrator, educators. They're educators, even within their fields. And so I'm excited just about the information. I'm hopeful that you will absolutely take it with you. And one thing that I want to say, and I'll just reiterate this, and I'm ending here. I'm ending here. Relationships matter. When I think about, my husband and I, again, two teenagers, we've been helping in the school system since they were in pre-K. One of the things that have benefited us from a parent perspective is just relationships. We have some of their teachers on speed dial. We can email them right now. I mean, they're one of my son's favorite teachers, his fifth grade teachers, Miss Jennings. She actually lives not too well, about an hour from us, in a place where we used to live. Adores her. I can text her right now. I could inbox or email her right now, and she would respond, simply because we built a relationship as it relates to the success of our children. We always said, and my husband is a phenomenal partner, father, fellow advocate. One of the things that he says often is, we are in this together. We are supporting each other for the betterment of our child. And when teachers and administrators hear that, they are so willing to be open, at least the ones that we've experienced. They've been open and willing to help us as much as possible. So I would just end by saying, from a parent perspective, again, equity isn't this out of touch, out of reach, concept. It is something that we can work towards every single day, whether you are an administrator, a teacher, social worker, no matter what role you play. If you're a parent, if you're just somebody who loves a child, think about the best interests of that child, the best interests of that student. Egos aside, we don't know everything, but it's about coming together in relationship, in partnership, with intentional, incremental decisions. And I believe we can have everyday equity. Thank you all so much for joining. Join me next week. We're going to have another amazing conversation. Same time, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What will you do to achieve equity today and tomorrow? It's not up to somebody else. It's up to you.